So let me just, before I turn it over to Meredith and Lorraine, let me tell you a little bit about Meredith and some of her history. Meredith Harper serves as the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at Eli Lilly and Company. Meredith serves, again, she's the CISO there. She's responsible for the company's global information security program. Prior to joining Eli Lilly in 2018 as the Senior Director, Deputy Chief Information Security Officer, she served as the Chief Information Privacy and Security Officer at Henry Ford Health Systems, where she had ultimate responsibility for protection of Henry Ford's provider insurance, retail, and research business. She's an active member of the Healthcare Compliance Association and International Association of Privacy Professionals. She holds dual certifications in healthcare compliance and privacy. She's certified as a healthcare information security privacy practitioner through the International Information Security Certificate Consortium, Inc., and a certified information security manager through the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. She's earned her master's in health service administration and a bachelor's degree in computer information systems from the University of Detroit Mercy. She also earned a master's in jurisprudence and health law from Loyola University Chicago of Law. Meredith serves on advisory boards in support of empowering women and minorities to embark upon careers in technology, especially in information security. She also served her community for 28 years through the Diamond Life membership in Delta Sigma Theta sorority. So I am going to turn it over to Lorraine, and she can invite our special guest today, Meredith Harper.
Okay, very good. Wow. I'm wondering what Meredith hasn't done. So anyway, but before we get started, I want to invite the audience to submit your questions in the chat. And as we go through our conversation, I'll definitely bring you into the conversation. So I'll be monitoring that. I'm multitasking today. So without further ado, let's bring Meredith in. Hey, Meredith.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm so good.
This is going to be fun today. This is going to be fun.
I know. The one thing I regret is that I did not put the fireside fire behind me in my virtual background, but we can imagine that.
Yes, we can.
Anyway. So thank you so much for being here. I think, most of the audience probably knows, obviously they've heard the amazing accomplishments that you've done in your career. And for those that don't know Eli Lilly, why don't you spend just a couple minutes telling the audience about Eli Lilly and tell us about what's happening in terms of the pandemic and the COVID situation with respect to Eli Lilly.
Sure. I'll be happy to share a little bit about the company that I'm so proud to be a part of. So Eli Lilly and Company was started in 1876. So we've been around for a little bit of time, if you will, so 144 years. And we are a pharma and medical device company headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. We are a global company, so we actually have representation around the world for the work that we do. 34,000 employees, 8,000 of those employees are focused on research every day to create medicines to make life better for people around the world. We do products marketed in 120 different countries. And we're known for medicines like Humalog and Trulicity for diabetes. So if you've heard of those, that comes from Eli Lilly. Emgality for pain. So if you've heard of that, that comes from us as well. And we have a plethora of other medicines that we provide to patients to make their lives better. Now we're entering into this COVID fight. It wasn't one that we foresaw coming into this, but we are ready and we are able to rise to the occasion, as our CEO says, that we are built for this. How do we help to ensure that patients are getting the best treatment that they need for something that we didn't anticipate? So we are entering into that COVID space. And it's been an interesting journey. It really has. And we have been concerned about not only the patients in which we serve, but also the community that we are a part of, as well as our team members. What are some of the things that we can do to keep them as safe as we possibly can? So we've had a lot going on, as you can see, over the last 144 years, and I'm looking forward, even though I won't be around for the next 144, but I'm looking forward
That's right.
to Eli Lilly being here, still continuing to do the great work of giving patients everything that they need in order to survive through illness.
Great. Fantastic.
Yes.
So I know, talking about, we are 7 months into the pandemic now, and I know when we talked, when we were prepping, you were told me a lot about what Eli Lilly is doing to really
Yeah.
secure the health and mental well-being of your employees. And you had some really interesting, projects and kind of approach that you have to keeping the employees, especially in your security group, safe and engaged and productive. So we can tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how Eli Lilly is supporting that.
Sure, sure. So it's something that at the global level, we're actually putting together programs that are sponsored by our wellness groups across the globe for Lilly to ensure that our team members are having that balance. So we knew when we first got into the business of COVID and being able to respond to it, we were operating at a pace that was extreme for us. It was something that we weren't used to, but we revved it up a little bit and wanted to make sure that we were moving quite quickly. But one of the things that we found, even though we were producing at a greater level across all of our business, we wanted to ensure that our team members had the right level of balance. I was concerned about burnout. I was concerned about the overwhelming perspectives and nature of you having to work from home, which is different. We have individuals that like to engage. Lilly is a very relationship based company, so we like to be face to face with each other, and now that was taken away. So what do we do? And so some of the things that we talked about within our security group is giving people the license to say, I need a break. We open that up to our team members. They talk to their leadership about it and say, tomorrow I think I need to take a half a day. There's a lot going on. I need to just take a breather. So we're opening up those opportunities for them to have the ability for them to care for themselves and not only care about the work that we're doing for our patients, but how do they create the balance for themselves as well. I think one of the other things that I think is really cool about this working from home, and even though it could be a drain on people at times, I love to see the real life that's happening behind people. So we have the kids that show up in conference calls. And so we invite the kids in and we let them wave at us and we talk to them and see how their days are going. We have the pets and the animals and the dogs and the cats that want to be a part of the team as well. So we have really stretched out our definition of what we consider to be a Lilly team member. And I think that also helps with our team members' perspectives around the fact that they're bringing their entire self to work, not just the part that we typically see in the office. We get to see everything. So what we realized that as we continue to do that, our team started to settle in. And so it wasn't more so a crisis anymore. It was more so the way that we do business and the way that we move forward, which is the way that we wanted them to think about this. We have done virtual happy hours. We have done karaoke competitions. We have done dancing competitions. We have done and tried a ton of things to make sure that we're infusing some of that engagement along the way, especially as we turn up the ability for us to pump out our deliverables quicker and faster. So it's been a good journey. It's been a good journey, but we are very interested in making sure that we maintain that balance overall.
Yeah, and I can definitely say that, I do especially since March, I've been doing
Mhm.
probably 10, 12 Zoom hours,
Sure.
not every day, but a lot of the days. And
Mhm.
it is exhausting. And I know what you mean by every once in a while, I'm like, time out. I've got to take a half day.
You too.
And it's amazing what happens. The other day, I was talking to a CISO that was going to be on an upcoming panel. And my kids are grown, so they're not in the house anymore. And my dog was here. And for some reason, he just came over and wanted to get up on my lap. And I'm like, okay. And then the other CISO on the other side said, oh, let me go get my dog. And he went and got his dog
Yes.
and brought him
Yes.
up. And it
Yeah.
just, I don't know, it just, in so many ways, kind of the silver lining in all this pandemic is equalizing in some ways. These situations
Sure.
where you bring your personal life into work. I feel like people are more relaxed if they
Yeah.
can do that. So I really think that that's a good thing.
They are. I actually solicited the support of my leadership team, so my senior directors and directors that report to me, and we created a video series of what we do to actually wind down. What do we do when we need to take a break? And so I am a huge fan of Miss Pac-Man. I have a video game in my home. So I let them watch me scream and holler as I was attempting to beat my husband's high score. So it's those moments where we get a chance to be real and we get a chance to be human. We always talk about in our arena about people, process, and technology. And I think we spend a lot of energy on the technology aspects of what we do, but how much energy do we really spend on the people aspect? And I think that as leaders in this new space, it is really forcing us to think differently around how we engage with our team members. And I'm being expected, as from my leadership, expected to be able to address the people component that sometimes we forget about as technologists because it's not first and foremost in our minds. But we've had this great opportunity to be able to refocus on that. And so I think that's what makes this a unique situation for us all.
Yeah, and I know that our CEO at Excellion is, he's very numbers driven, very matter of fact. But since COVID started, every time we have even just a one-on-one meeting or a company meeting, he'll spend the first 5 or 10 minutes really talking about us. And he's
Mhm.
made it a point to go and talk to everybody. Now that in San Francisco, that's where he lives, they've opened it up so that you can, at least go eat outdoors. And so he's been scheduling meetings with individuals at all levels of the company. And I think that, it really comes, like you said, it's lessons in leadership. And it starts at the top. And he's setting the example. And then he just, yesterday, we had a 3 hour leadership meeting, and he was saying, be sure that you take time to talk to your employees and
Correct.
ask what they're doing, how they're doing. And it goes a long way. So I think, like you said, it starts at the top.
It
So,
does.
in terms of the security programs that you run
Mhm.
to secure Eli Lilly, talk about what that's doing in terms of, I know a lot of CISOs have told me from the beginning of COVID, the executive team basically, where before there was sort of a fight to get a seat at the table. Now you
Mhm.
are the table. It is the executive team just said,
Yeah.
okay, lead us. How do we get through this? How do we secure the work from home force? And now we're looking at this long term. So talk to us about the programs that are in place and what you're doing to address that.
So thankfully, that hasn't been my experience. I think that Lilly has, and our executive committee understands that we have to be have a seat at the table to be able to address those concerns as we're rolling out new initiatives, as we're looking at new therapeutics and things of that nature. So I haven't had that challenge. But one of the things that we did take a look at as we started to prepare ourselves for this shift from working from our local areas to our home environments is training and awareness was huge. Of course, there were technology and technological things that we needed to do in terms of looking at our patching schedules, paying attention to connections from an identity and access management perspective. But we also needed to make sure that we were training our team members a little bit differently because when we think about our work environments, they're a secure environment. The way that we print is secure, the way that we access is secure. And now we are pushing people to a home environment where we need to make sure that number one, our controls can reach to those home environments. But in the event that our controls do not, then what do they do? And so I think that we took a huge interest in that and was able to pinpoint segments of our population, especially in our research community, that we needed to target more education in those spaces. I wanted to make sure that if that email by for whatever reason makes it into your inbox, do you click or do you not click? And so even though we have very robust social engineering programs here, we felt that we needed to take a little bit of extra effort in this instance and provide that. One of the other things that I thought was interesting along the way is Lilly is no different than any other organization that partners with others. So we have third parties that assist us in carrying out our mission. They have access in some instances to our systems, access to our data. And we wanted to make sure that our partners were also taking the necessary care that is needed in order to protect their team members who are now also being pushed to the home environment. Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting that we learned along the way is that never take for granted that your third party partners are prepared for something like this. this. Sometimes organizations are not always fully prepared. We might be halfway there, but not all the way there. But your third parties are, especially your critical ones, are the ones that you need to keep your eye on, just to make sure that they are doing all the necessary things up front. So one of the things that we did is took a look at our third party environment, and we started to think about who are those critical partners that support large portions of Lilly's business. And with those partners, we were able to connect together and find better ways to increase the security in their spaces and ensure that they can continue to deliver the support that we needed and as we deliver medicines to people around the world. So that was a great a learning journey for us. And we now are in a position where we can continue to monitor those third parties at a closer range than what we were probably doing prior to COVID. So that was a huge lesson. I think one of the other lessons that was a nice to have, I wasn't expecting it as we were going through the first initial pieces of this, was my team started to perform at a level that was amazing. So we were solutioning differently. We were being more imaginative around what the solution should be for a specific problem. We were trying to break down some of those barriers that we typically see in organizations so we can move fast and quick and be nimble. I was so proud of the team, and I'm still very proud of the team in terms of the way that we've been able to deliver in this COVID space. But one of the things, if I can't say anything else today around this, is third parties, third parties, third parties. Please understand what your third parties are doing. Make sure you have appropriate contacts at those third parties. If your third parties are global, so they might be sitting in another geography, make sure that you understand the regulations and the laws, or even the any restrictions that would prevent you from getting devices and equipment to those third parties, because there was a little bit of brokering that we needed to do to help some of our third parties in other parts of the world. And some of that required for us to ship equipment in. And so in those instances, we had to contend with the restrictions that were being placed on those countries for incoming commerce and devices. So make sure that you know all of those things up front before you get yourself in a situation like we are in now. So a lot of lessons learned, a lot of success there. And now we're at a point where we now shift. How do we shift into who we're going to be in the future post-COVID? And those are the conversations that are starting to ramp up within Lilly. I'm excited about it because there's a couple things that I think I'm going to be able to do now that I probably didn't have the opportunities to do before, as it relates to talent and recruitment, and the ability for me to be able to tap talent in other geographies now that we understand that remote working works. So we now see that it works. And now I have the ability to probably expand my team in a way that I didn't really see that avenue before.
Yeah, that's very good. And I have heard that quite a bit from CISOs that, like in the banking industry, that usually just hired in their region. And once they, realized, wow, they can go look for talent outside of their area, it just, opened up this whole opportunity for them. So that's good. And
Yes.
I have heard a lot about when you talk about third parties, and, before there was a lot of sort of a heavy lifting from one, let's say at Eli Lilly, much bigger than some of your third parties, and kind of dictating. I'm not saying Eli Lilly did that, but dictating the way things went. And now, again, it's like more leveling the playing field where you're coming together, trying to figure it out together. And I
Yes.
think that has created a very positive working relationship at all different levels. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good thing that we can see is coming out of this pandemic.
That's a good point. When I think back to years, I've been doing this for a long time, and I think back to the early years of us engaging with third parties, we really took a hands-off approach. And this is industry. I'm not talking specifically about Lilly,
Right.
but we felt that they understood what the concerns were. They need to develop their own programs. So we're going to let them kind of run and do their thing. I think you're right. I think we're at a point now where the partnerships that we have been desiring for years with our third party partners, we're starting to see more of that, where we're giving our input, they're providing their input, and we're solutioning together to make sure that everyone is safe in their environments. That's drastically different than how we started out in the industry. So I'm proud of the evolution that we've made there. We cannot leave our third parties out there alone. We have to do this together.
That's very true. So
Yeah.
let's shift gears a little bit and talk about obviously, it's been a topic of conversation for months and months. I mean, actually years and years, okay, let's be honest, but certainly months and months in this pandemic. There's been a lot of things happening around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what you've talked a lot about this when we were prepping, and I know this is a passion of yours about the opportunity as leaders and how we can drive the tangible change that we need, and like setting the stage. So let's talk a little bit about that and what what Lilly's response was to the social injustice.
Okay, thank you. This has been a topic that we have discussed over the years. I've been doing this work for 27 years, and I've heard various levels of conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion in the tech space. And I'm so incredibly proud of the way that Lilly addressed what we saw happening in the world around us. We understood that we cannot just be a good corporate citizen providing jobs and opportunities for individuals, but not understanding and addressing the external forces that impact those team members that come to work for Lilly every day. Our CEO, David Ricks, has been phenomenal and very vocal around Lilly's role, the expectation of us as leaders, and really opened up a platform for us to have levels of conversation around diversity, equity, inclusion that we have not seen in our industry, to be honest. And so when we think about the commitment as a company, after the George Floyd incident, after we saw the impact psychologically on our team members, we took an opportunity at that point to say we need to now touch base with people on a different level. We need to talk to them not in terms of what they deliver to Lilly, but we need to talk to them in terms of their psychological safety and whether we are protecting the ability for them to be their best selves when we have these external forces that are impacting us. Within a couple of days of the George Floyd incident, our CEO actually met with all of the African American VPs across the company and asked us questions. This is a time of learning. It was a time of sharing. He wanted to hear our lived experiences, and he wanted to think about what can Lilly do to represent in this space and to drive change, not necessarily just for Indianapolis, but really a beacon for our industry and possibly the world. And so I was so thankful that he took that time and that energy. So you could see the tone at the top was one that this was important. As we trickled this down, some of the things that I did within my own specific area is I reached out to everyone and said, listen, I will open my calendar up. If you want to have a conversation with me, if you want to do a group session with me, if you want to create a safe space where we could ask questions, not be so concerned about how we're asking them, but giving people the ability to just share. And I thought that that was phenomenal because, again, in my career, I haven't seen a company support leaders doing that type of transparent discussion with their team members. And we talked about everything from racism to sexism to ageism to what is my lived experience being an African American woman leader in IT. And I shared some of those experiences with people. We were able to ask questions around African American hair. I mean, it was that deep. We talked about the fact of when do we use the terms African American versus Black? And so we offered education in those areas. So we have been engaged in this dialogue for months now at Lilly. And I'm starting to see a level of transparency and openness with my team that we always would hope to have, right? Because we've now opened this platform up for discussion. My CIDO, Artie Shaw, is who I report to. She's our Global Chief Information and Digital Officer. And she is an amazing leader with a very open heart and mind around these topics, and has also provided us with platforms to have panel discussions with two African American VPs within IT, as well as two white Caucasian individuals that were leaders in the space as well. And we got a chance to really share how we think about life. And that offered a humanness. Again, how do we show people that we're human and that, yes, I could be a great CISO, I could be a great director of this, or I could be a great manager of this, but behind all of it, I'm a person. And so we gave people the ability to share their humanness in this space. And I think that we're better for it as an organization. One of the things that our CEO also talked about is how is Lilly going to show up in the community? we are a huge supporter of the Indianapolis community. And so we got an opportunity early on after the George Floyd incident to host what we call the Day of Solidarity. And this was our ability to reach outside of the walls of Lilly and connect with the community, giving them opportunities to share about their lived experiences, and then to make some commitments around what will Lilly do now. So, how do we help impact the culture of Indianapolis, the culture that sometimes lends to some of the things that we were seeing from a social injustice perspective? So, our CEO very boldly said that we would commit $25 million to social justice causes to be able to support those initiatives to ensure that Lilly has an enabling voice to those organizations that need that assistance. He decided to pledge 25,000 volunteer hours of Lilly team members, of getting us out into the community and being able to support those initiatives as well. We were one of the first companies early on during the pandemic. March 8th, we decided to send all of our team members home. We were one of the first in the Indianapolis area that showed a care and a concern that we had for our team members' health and well-being. Wrapping the social justice pieces in with this also shows that there's a caring and concern that we have about our team members, but not only just them, but also their family members and their extended family. And how are we creating a society that we can live in that balances what we need from a diversity and inclusion perspective? I'm excited about where we're going. Somebody asked me the question, well, Meredith, what makes this different? Why is this time so different than any of the other instances that we've seen across the country? I believe it's the difference because our young people are different. And when I think about the energy that I'm watching from our younger population, the way that they are holding on to this ideal that we can change and transform who we are as a country, they are not willing to let it go. And I'm not saying that we let it go in our generations, but they're definitely not willing to let it go. And
That's
so
so true.
I love the energy that they bring to the table. I love the fact that they are challenging us. As for some of us who sit in elder spots, that they're challenging us in terms of the way that we continue to drive conversations in these spaces. So I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to who we're going to become as a company, but also looking forward to who we're going to become as a community. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, that's very good. There's so many things I was thinking about. I mean, one thing, just like I mentioned, our CEO, reaching out to everybody and during the pandemic and just making sure we're okay. Same with the African American community. And actually, he came to the table and said, as a company, we're going. He's encouraging us to do volunteer hours. We can pick any day, any time that we want. And we're also going to be donating to social injustice causes as well to that area. So that made us feel really good. I know that everybody in our company started talking, wow, this is great to hear it from the CEO. And I think that, yeah, and I don't know, it does make a big difference. And I can also relate. And I have two, adult daughters, and you talk about the younger generation not letting it go, and I see that loud and clear. And you see the rallies, you see the people talking. Just my daughter day to day, talking to their friends about it, and you can tell it definitely feels different. And I'm glad. And we're here. We need to support that and come together to support them. So we've got to lead the way.
We do, and we have to continue to create safe spaces. So I think that's what's been our challenge in our country, is that we haven't always felt like we've had safe spaces to share. And I think now we're starting to see that change, where we're offering those safe spaces. One of the things that I shared with the leadership at Lilly is that we have to take every opportunity to make it a learning opportunity, right? So you might not ask the question the right way. We can always correct that on the back end, but don't feel like you can't ask the question because you don't know all of the right words to say. We can teach and coach each other through that. So it's those safe spaces that's important. And then truthfully, as we continue to create these safe spaces and allow people to bring their humanness into the workplace, we're going to see a different level of engagement. We're going to see a different level of delivering the transparency and honesty and connectedness. All of that is going to come as a byproduct of this. I think the more we try to keep ourselves separate, the more we create problems for us in terms of the way that we can take advantage of solutioning together. I was talking to a good friend and we were having conversations around men and the way that men think versus the way that women think. And we're just chuckling it up and having a good time. And we talked about the way that we approach problems differently. And sometimes when we don't have very diverse environments, we miss that opportunity to be able to approach a problem and then say, here's how I would handle it as a woman. But a man might
That's
have a
right.
totally different perspective about how they handle it. And then when we come together, we get an opportunity to have that shared consciousness to create a great solution. Absent that, we're living in a bubble. And who wants to do that? Because eventually the bubble is going to burst, right? So you want to make
Exactly.
sure that you're offering those opportunities so we can be our best selves in these moments where we're choosing to perform the roles that we have been asked to perform for our jobs. So again, excited
Yeah.
about it.
And I think, what comes to mind when you talk about that is speaking up and being
Mhm.
confident and going
Yes,
into, situations where you can raise your hand and say, I don't know that, or I think this way. And I think creating safe places or safe spaces is extremely important. And I hope that is a takeaway the audience can take to their organizations, because it really starts with that, because then it allows people the space to do that, to raise their hand, or say something, I don't know what that means, or how
correct.
are you feeling about this? So
Correct.
very
And
good.
it gives you the ability also to say and stand in the fact that you belong. Again, I go back and I
Right.
think through some of the experiences that I have had as a African American woman in this space, all the way down to me being seen as the note taker, because that's probably all the women can do in a space like this. Or in some instances where I was seen as the housekeeper, even though I was the keynote speaker for an event and they thought I was the one there to serve coffee and asked me to get them coffee because we don't typically see people like you in these spaces. So I think the more we break down some of those barriers, it becomes normal to walk into a security conference and see women. It becomes normal to walk into these events and see people who look like you. And that's the role modeling that we have to show for the next generation that's coming behind us. One of the things that troubles me is that we have been having this conversation around women and minorities and the lack thereof in IT and IS and technical areas for a very long time. I'm interested to know, when are we going to stop having the conversation and actually do the work? Like, when are we going to really see this huge transformation of our workforce? And that doesn't mean that we haven't done some transforming. We have. It's not like it was 20, 30 years ago, but there's so much more ground that we need to make up here. We're missing out, and we need to figure out a way to address that.
Very good. So there's some questions very good questions, and let me start with it. It's going back to the first topic that we talked about. With so many virtual meetings and webinars happening, how do you manage burnout with information overload along with family and personal? I mean, that is the
Yeah,
$64,000 question, right?
it is.
But how are you addressing that, Lily?
Yeah, so one of the things that we have strongly encouraged is our leaders are expected to monitor the way that their teams are engaging. We're making sure that we're creating breaks in between the endless number of meetings that we can be in, so we can have that bio break, or we can go take a walk and step outside for 30 minutes. So we are really the ones who are encouraging people to do that. One of the other things is we've had some ability with some technology to be able to offer insights to your well-being in terms of the way you engage with technology. How many emails are you responding to after hours? We actually get stats back on that. We have a My Analytics platform that gives us those kinds of pieces of data on ourselves. So it also gives me the ability to look at those reports from my team members' perspective and say, okay, I have 3 people over here who throughout the entire month only had 3 days where they actually did not engage in some level of collaboration, email responding, or putting out a fire. And I can tell that from the stats that I'm given through those reports. So that gives me now the ability to go into a discussion to say, let's talk about balance. Let me help you figure out how we're going to put these breaks in your schedule so you're not overwhelming yourself. So this is back to the whole people component of what we do. We have to pay attention to people. We have to pay attention to their cues. We have to pay attention and not just look at the deliverables that they're bringing forth. So I think as a leader, you're responsible to be able to do that. You should be doing that for your team members. That's what we do at Lilly.
Yeah, very good. I think it's really at all levels of noticing and really, looking at the behavior because, it's hard to pick up things in Zoom. But just as an
Yes.
example, I was recently somebody in our team, on the marketing team at Excellion, I've worked with him 3.5 years, but he just, I don't know, something was not quite, there was just different. And
Yeah.
so I picked up the phone and I said, "Hey, let's have a talk." And so we actually got on Zoom so we could see each other, and we just
Mhm.
talked. And
Yes.
he was overworked and tired and
Yes.
really, not doing very well. And I said, "Well, in the last few meetings you looked really unhappy." And
Mhm.
then just like the next time I saw him on Zoom, it was a completely different person. And so
Yes.
I would
Yes.
say in kind of the real life scenario, it does work and it does help.
Yes.
Even when I get overloaded, my boss will call me. I remember I was on
Mhm.
vacation recently and he called me because I'd been working all through my vacation. And he just at the end of the week just called me and said, "Hey, you've been doing a great job. I just want to let you know." I was like, "Whoa!" It just
Mhm. Yeah.
it just freshened
It
things
it
up,
means a
right?
lot.
So
It means a
yeah,
lot to the team members. It lets them know that their leaders are caring about their health and well being. And so there's times when I would just randomly I am someone in my organization. I don't necessarily have to have interfacing with them, but I am just anyone and say, hey, how's everything going? How's the family? Is everybody still safe? Tell me what you're working on. How can I help you? That type of thing. And so I think just having that care and concern, bringing that forward in the conversations, I think really helps the team. And then again, just paying attention. We had an instance here where we were looking at some future opportunities for some of our early career professionals. And I noticed as we were starting to put names to different programs and initiatives that are offered, we kept using the same names over and over again. I kept hearing the same names. So it just took something as easy as me saying, hey guys, do we think we're using that person just a little too much? Maybe there's someone else that we might want to consider for that. And I think when we make those kind of statements in the room, it causes us to think differently, and we say, "Oh, well, we have just stated that we wanted this person to do 5 different things. Let's see if we can look for someone else." So I think it's just that consistent monitoring is what's going to help in that space.
yes, okay. So we have another question somewhat related.
Okay.
It says, "You spoke earlier regarding managing social engineering across your teams. Have you seen an increase in the number of social engineering events since your employees started working from home? And can you speak a little more about how you're managing those events?"
Yes. So in terms of an increase, no, we've been holding steady in terms of the number of attempts that we get against our organization. I haven't seen any significant increases there. In terms of how we manage it, is really the monitoring piece and the detection piece is really important. There's a level of technology, and I can't always go into the details around it. I'm sure you guys can understand that, but there's a level of technology behind it that blocks a significant number of attempts making it into our environment. For those, like I stated before, for those that make it through, we rely really on a human factor to be able to address those and make sure that we are not making the wrong decision or interfacing with that message inappropriately. But we haven't seen an increase in that. What we have seen, though, is that the actual social engineering events have become more sophisticated, if you will, and they have been tying them to the things that are important to us. So COVID is important to us. So we have been seeing the theme of COVID come up more in those spaces than we have seen in the past for other incidents that we've had to review and monitor, but not an increase at all in our space.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely have heard that the sophistication is definitely on the increase, and
Yeah.
it's definitely a challenge. Okay, a couple more questions.
Sure.
With the talent recruitment opportunities expanding, is there any internship or entry level cybersecurity positions with Lilly for those starting in the cybersecurity field?
So we have a very robust internship program at Lilly. It's not necessarily ran by my organization. I'm a part of a larger instance of that. So what I would encourage people to do if you're interested in internships at Lilly, go out on our website. There actually is a page out there that you can get more information of how you can become a part of some of those internships. We have about 40 schools that we engage with that provide us interns throughout the cycles of the year. And then we also have a really good track record of employing those interns after they have completed their assignments here with us. So I would encourage you to go to the website, get more information, reach out even to your schools, because sometimes your schools will have more information about how to engage in internships as well. But definitely our website will give you more info there. One of the other things I can say that we have continued to do in our organization is upskilling. So we know that our skills are forever changing because the threats are forever changing. So once you get an opportunity to work in our organization, we give you access to micro learnings through specific platforms. We also have the ability for you to become a cybersecurity apprentice. So we do have an apprentice program here at Lilly, but you would have to be a Lilly team member in order to take advantage of that. So start by going to the website.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, and this one is, so how do you ensure that the diversity personnel you hire have integrity as a leader in your organization?
So I guess the question is, how would we know that about anyone? I don't think it's a diversity question. I think it's something that you have to do your homework. What I have found is that over the years, we have had individuals. How can I say it? They have done research on our organization. But as we're looking at people to become a part of our program and become a part of our organization, are we doing the same level of research, specifically in the security space? Because our industry is quite small. So if someone comes to me and says, I want to join your team, I can probably call a couple people and find out information. I can ask, did you have any experience with this person? How do you believe they functioned as a leader? Do you believe they're aligned to our values? I can have those discussions because the industry is quite small. But I think that we have to do a little bit more research on those individuals. And when we're having these conversations, I think about the way that I interview people. 9 times out of 10, by the time you get to me, your technical capacity has already been vetted by the various other groups of people that have actually interviewed you. My job is to see the cultural fit of what we believe our core values are here at Lilly. And so my questioning is wrapped around that, where I want you to give me opportunity to hear about how you addressed specific instances where your integrity had to shine through. Because at the end of the day, that's all we really have from a security standpoint. My word and the word of our organization means everything. Because truthfully, especially in the healthcare space, being wrong on something can impact someone's life. So I have to make sure that we're operating with the greatest amount of integrity in our spaces. I normally do that through my cultural discussions when I'm interviewing people. But I think that you have to do some research on folks as well.
Very good. So I encourage everybody to ask more questions. We've gone through all of them right now. I think just closing out, we've got about 10 minutes here, or 15 minutes. But
Yeah.
we talked about the progress that we're making,
Okay.
both in a not enough, and we have made some progress. But I think it would be good to talk about what we can do, what the audience can consider from women and minorities in IT and IS, and giving them opportunities. I know when we were prepping, I talked to you about from this is not really IT related, but it's opportunities. We created a firstboard.io group of women who are board ready for roles on a tech board. And I think we need to do more of these types of things that give women the opportunity. And then one of our objectives in this group is to reach out to the VCs and the PE world and tell them about us. And
Yes.
they don't know. And we've got some really good feedback from the people that we've reached out to. So I think that we need to do more of those types of things. But I'm curious what you think in terms of how we give people opportunities in that area.
Awesome question. Glad you asked it. So I was having a conversation a couple weeks ago with an industry group that I'm a part of, and we were having this discussion around increasing the number of opportunities for minorities and women in the IT space and the tech space. And one of the suggestions that came up was we need to create more robust mentoring programs. Okay, I'm exhausted with the idea of mentoring programs. We have been mentoring women, we have been mentoring minorities for years. That's not really what is going to solve our problem, right? So what I shared with the group is I would more so like for us to have organizations that have made a commitment to providing access to roles and opportunities for women and minorities to be able to transition into these spaces. Once they transition, there needs to be a level of sponsorship and support support that we wrap around those individuals to ensure that they continue to grow in their field and stay within a STEM career of some sort. I think that we don't sponsor enough. We don't provide enough access. We have mentored, so we can't mentor anymore. That's not what's going to solve this, right? I probably have a litany of a list of folks that I mentor, but they're still having a struggle of getting the access to the role. So when we think about allyship, we have to ensure that our allies know what we really need from them. And when I'm having conversations with some of my male allies, I'm saying to them, I have this really great person who has skill sets in all of these specific areas. I need you to work across the industry. How courageous are we being in our conversations with how we infuse diversity and inclusive candidates into these spaces? Again, no more mentoring. Don't want to do it anymore. I want to provide access. I want access.
That's so
and I
true.
want
It's so true. Yeah.
no mentoring.
Let's take action.
That's right.
It's so funny because, talk about the first board group that we have is cohort of women who are tech board ready and
Yes.
but have not, most of us have not been on a board before. So it's all a matter of, getting out there to talk about it. So I went and I sat with my boss and talked to him and I said, hey, I'm a member of this first board group. And he said, you know what? I'm looking for a woman to put on, I need an independent board member for our board. And I'd love to put a woman on the board. And so we went back to our group and we were able to place somebody from the cohort on the board.
Yes.
And again, it's asking, it's telling, it's getting out there and taking action. It's not, I completely agree with you. I mean, there's a place for mentorship, but like all the things we're talking about with the social injustice, it's time to stop talking about it and it's time to take action. And I really, really 100% believe that.
No, you're absolutely correct. And, when I think about my trajectory and my career, it took me 20 years to actually report to a woman. I had male leaders for the first 20 years of my career. So ever since then, which is an interesting evolution, ever since then, I've only reported to women. But it took 20 years for me to get to that point in my career. So in those instances, every single opportunity that I had, the door had to be opened by a male. And I'm going to be quite specific, by a white male. That was my access point.
Right.
I want us to be at a point where we can, again, step that up a little bit, continue to offer those access points, not only at the organizational level, but to your point, at the board level. When are we going to say, I'm going to take a chance on that person and I'm going to put them on the board and I'm going to provide the right level of support so they can be successful and really continue to move their career forward? For me, I'm looking towards retirement. I hate to say it, but I am. And so I have a time frame in my head, and I'm really on this mission now. For the time that I have left in the industry, how do I replicate myself in this industry? How do I ensure that there's another Black woman that has been given an opportunity to sit in a global CISO space? How am I ensuring that another woman, regardless of her race, is sitting in a CISO space? So my job right now is to evangelize in a way that I am bringing people to the point where they're thinking differently about what the next wave of talent looks like for us. Who comes next? Because eventually we're going to have to move on, right? So as we move on to these board assignments and retirement and things of that nature, how are we preparing the next level of leadership? How are we opening up those doors for them? It's going to cause us to have to really have some courageous conversations around what we do and what we don't do. And I'm all up for it. I'm for it. Let's do it.
I 100% agree. I'm not even sure how we can close a better conversation with that, other than I look at what role model I'm playing for my daughters, and they're 24 and 27, and they look to me for leadership and for doing the right thing. And my youngest daughter, is an engineer. She just graduated last year, and she just got a job. And of course, it's difficult because she's in this virtual environment. She hasn't really met the people that she works with. But I told her, you've got to speak up. And now, for her, if you ever met her, you would know that's not really a problem for her.
Okay.
But I think giving them the courage to take that step is so important. And so I just think that we're on the verge of something good and great. And I think people just need to take action. So I think with that, let's see if go ahead.
No, I'm saying, and start early. It's great to be able to tap on the shoulders of those early college students, but I'm saying start even earlier than that. Start to open up the
Right.
possibilities for those fourth and fifth graders who don't even understand what they could possibly become over a period of time. Show them that they can become something. You know, give them that role model. So I think we even have to start a little bit more earlier than just the college students.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, we're
Any
up to the
questions?
hour now. There's no more questions right now, but I think that I'm sure that you've given the audience a lot to think about. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and there's just so much more to come. We should probably continue this on a quarterly basis at a minimum so that we get the word out there. So I
Sure.
just love talking to you. I know our audience did as well. So I'm going to turn it, well, and also I just want to, if people want to reach out to you, you can connect with you on LinkedIn as well.
Yes.
So thank
Yes.
you so much for your time. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kim.
Thank you.